My name is Judy Mannion, and I am a participant in Pop des Fleurs, the community outreach project of the Fiber Arts Guild of Pittsburgh's Fiber Art International 2016. And today I'm going to show you, or try to show you, how to make a wire frame for a flower, something of this type or this type, and talk about how I work in Freeform Crochet to create flowers that look like the ones you see on the back, and to encourage you to experiment with all kinds of shapes in this wire and have a lot of fun. So what I typically start with is 14 gauge galvanized wire. You may find other wires that you prefer. The point is it needs to be strong enough to support your fiber work, whether you crochet, whether you knit, whether you weave. It needs to be able to support it in ice and snow, because Pop des Fleurs is going to be an outdoor installation of flowers in the winter. So I typically start with, well, let me tell you, gloves, because I learned the hard way that it's much easier on your hands, and it also gives you additional strength when you're shaping this kind of wire. I start with right off the coil and shape. Some people might prefer to do some type of measurement and cut first. It's not my method, but please understand there are many methods that will work here, and you will find out what you like best. I typically start with a loop of a petal of the approximate size that I'm going to want to work in. Kind of twist that one to hold that first loop. And these loops or petals can be, skinny, like you see in the yellow one behind you. They can be curved up, made to look like tulip petals, daffodils, a great variety of flowers, funky made-up flowers, whatever you want. But just to give you a sense of starting with approximate sizes that you want to work in. And as many petals as you like. I've done some with 4, 5, and 6. I think 6 or 8 is probably the most I've worked with at one time. I simply keep shaping until I get the number of petals that I want to work with. And I don't worry about perfect shaping, because as you can see, as I'm bending here, I can go back and reshape. So once I have approximately the number of petals that I want to work with, I'm going to cut off a piece at the end that is long enough, wire cutters, long enough that I can go back and make a little hook out of this extra long piece to kind of hook them all together. And let me pause here, if I may, my 3-petal flower, and talk about joining. When you're joining these petals together to start your fiber work. And when I say fiber, I mean whether you're working in an acrylic yarn or ribbons or weaving or whatever. Some people may prefer to tape all of this together to make it very secure, or twist it very tightly. What I have found is that I like twisting it just enough to sort of ballpark hold it together. Here's a wireframe that's fully formed. So we've gone from this to this, and I haven't taped the center. Some people might prefer to tape the center or tie it securely. I loop the wire fairly loosely, and then I actually finish securing all the petals together as I'm working with the crochet. So for example, this one is very, very tight in the center, and the ones you see behind me are very, very tight in the center, but they became tight as I was working with my yarn. After I finish the wire frame, then I start with yarn in a center with whatever color I want to start working with, and I cover the edges of the frame with crochet. I have found, and There may be more than one way to approach this, and find your own comfort zone. Those of you who crochet a lot are definitely going to make your own designs and develop your own methods. To do a single crochet around the edges of all of the wire petals first. For those of you who are not familiar with single crochet or any of the other stitch terms that I'm going to use, there are wonderful tutorials out on YouTube and other places on the web that can show you stitch by stitch if you want to start exploring those. And really, you don't need to know a lot of stitches to do something like this. If you only know one or two and feel comfortable using different colors and putting them in different orders, I think you can have an awful lot of fun with just one or two stitch styles. But I've learned that single crocheting around the edges gives me a base to work on as I start to actually fill. So the steps that I've taken after single crochet around a petal, I start the filling process, which you can see here. And for those of you who are familiar with a variety of crochet stitches, you're probably going to be able to tell that I have used single, double, half crochet, triple, and you may also even notice in these two little sort of circular designs that I have actually crocheted a piece separately, a little circle or a little pattern of some sort, and then stitched it into the middle of the petal. So this was actually almost like an applique. So now I am ready to start talking in a little bit more detail about filling the petals, the truly, truly fun part. I have no rules to give you, wherever you're comfortable starting. But I wanted to start this one just enough to show you that for a really large petal like this, I did some chain stitch, and again you can find chain stitches out on the web, tutorials on chain stitch, across in a few places just to give me some anchoring points as I started to stitch. But let's see what we can do here. I'm going to pick a pink to work with and just go right into and start working. Now for those of you who are crocheters who have not done freeform. If you've done freeform, you're just going to tear through this and have a blast. If you haven't done freeform yet, look at it this way. You're drawing a picture with your hook. So instead of following the kinds of traditional patterns that crocheters are used to, do X number of stitches and turn and go back the other direction, that kind of thing. In this case, think of it as drawing with colored pencils or even painting with a brush. You have your hook, that's your brush, and you have your yarn, that's your paint, and you are going to do stitches instead of dots and create the designs of your heart and have a ball. So as you can see, I have a number of pieces running across, stitches running across that give me an anchor point. I have openings that I can fill. I have a couple of little applique pieces here stitched in. I need to stitch that one better, don't I? And now I'm starting to work in a different shade of pink around this opening. You'll find that you have to do a lot of turning and twisting to find what's comfortable for you in stitching. No rules. This is what looks good to you and what feels good to you. So you're stitching and painting and drawing and manipulating so that you can get it done. I frequently will turn a piece over and work from the other side, both for looks as on the back side, When I say back side, I mean simply because it's turned over to the other side. There is no real back or front here. Because I'm at a point where it's a little bit easier to work on this particular petal on the other side. Both sides of these petals are going to look very good. This isn't whether there's a right side or a wrong side, and depending upon how you shape the petals and bend them and how they're eventually mounted, again, what you would call the front side or the back side might change. So both sides are being filled and decorated and colored equally. For those of you who do a lot of stitching, of course, there's always that question of loose ends. And please note that I've got a few of them hanging here. While I'm still working on fill, it's easy to work these loose ends in. But when the whole flower is done, certainly I want to go back and make certain that there are no loose ends, they're all tucked in and trimmed appropriately. But for now, I'm focusing on filling and embellishing and decorating. And when I talk about fill, let me say, from my point of view, openings and patterns can be very interesting. So fill doesn't mean that you have to have non-stop stitching. And again, this is design. This is up to you. This is the creative process. Now I've worked a little bit in this lighter shade of pink, and I'm sure you've got the point of what the options are here. I'm going to, if you'll pardon my awkwardness here, just kind of snip this off so I don't get tangled up with too many balls of yarn at once, which I tend to do from time to time. And you can see I've got a little loose in there, but don't worry, there are lots of opportunities to work it in. And I'd like to talk about edging, which can be really fun. Well, I'll just grab this one right now, it's handy. Again, not a necessity. This is a design element for each one of you to experiment with and see what you like. But as you would notice probably on this flower right here, there's a lot of fluff and crimple and roughly edged, and of course in nature there are those kinds of edges too. So if you want to experiment with edging around the kind of the hard edge of the wireframe, now you've got all this wonderful single crochet around there. It's a base to attach, and stick your crochet hook in and pull through a color that you like and have a blast. This is, and if you don't like it, you just rip it right back out, no harm done. So if you're able to kind of follow here, I've brought in, attached a new piece, and I'm gonna do some chains, and then I'm gonna go in and attach again, and whoops, it didn't want to do that. But here we go. And some more chains. And more chains and more chains. Sometimes I do 3, 4, 5, 6 if I'm making a sort of a ruffled edge like the one you see, and also there's a ruffled edge behind me. You can do as many as you want, whatever looks good to you. But you certainly can embellish the edges. You can also, I'm going to kind of stop with embellishment now because I certainly think you've got the point by looking at the finished flowers. Another thing that you can do, depending upon whether the design, you can actually join some of these petals in the lower parts of them too, to give more of that cup-like look, like you see in a tulip, for example. So I'd like to move from this. We've talked about the wireframe form, we've talked about attaching, we've talked about doing a single crochet around the outer edge of the wire to give you a base to work from. We've talked about filling with different kinds of stitches. We've talked about the possibility of doing edging with chain stitches, or it can be double and triple crochet stitches that get attached. We've talked about trimming loose ends, that kind of finishing. I'd like to kind of move on to some other kind of finishing tips and tricks, including, for example, centers. what you see in the center of this in progress frame and flower would not be a finished center from my point of view. Most likely when I finish the fill and the edges of all these petals, very likely I'm either going to attach a smaller flower in the middle, or if not, I'm probably going to crochet, if I can point to the one in the back, some type of a colorful center in 2 shades of yellows, oranges, pinks, greens, whatever suits the overall design and the colorways, and then secure that in the middle. So keep in mind that as your flower evolves, once the basic petals are done, there's still a whole lot of opportunity for embellishment and fun. Centers, and let me talk about shaping. Because another thing that I've learned is when the whole flower is done, sometimes reshaping the petal creates a different effect. And an example of that would be the yellow one you see behind me. That one actually started off with more rounded, kind of, fatter petals like these. And as I worked in it, I started to elongate them, shape them, curl them up, and stitch across them in various ways. So centering and shaping after all of the basic crocheting done continues that entire soup to nuts design process and creates unique flowers that I have to say I don't think you're ever going to see two alike. So as we move forward in this project, we look forward to working with you. We look forward to hearing from you about what's working, what's not working. We look forward to new ideas, new ways to both create wireframes and embellish them, and creating the brightness and the light and the joy that we so badly need in these gray Pittsburgh winters, using fibers and fiber techniques that we reasonably can expect to hold up under ice and snow and keep us going this winter. Enjoy.